Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. We're doing the 6th Summer 2018 Analogues update for today's first video. Our good friend James Ackwill has been trawling through the Analogues once again, and we've got a little bit more to add to what we've been talking about over the last week or so, which is March and the summers that follow the Marches that we've been looking at, and then we're going to finish. Up with March. Not too much more we can do on that, and we will be moving on. The main part of this video is actually going to be related to ENSO. So we've been in a La Nina through the winter, through last winter and into the spring. That La Nina is fading now. We think it's going towards ENSO neutral conditions for the summer. So we're going to have a look at summers that started off as La Ninas and moved to ENSO neutral. So they're Nina to neutral summers, if you like. We'll have a look and see what those summers were like. That's going to be the main point of the 6th Summer 2018 Analogues update. So I'll get on with that for you in a second, just to say that today's second video will be the Gasworthy Sunday Roundup. That'll be coming up sometime around lunchtime, so it'll be your usual eclectic mix of this and that for your Sunday afternoon viewing pleasure. And then late this afternoon into this evening, we're going to do something a bit different. We're going to have a look at the long-range ECMWF and Meteo France seasonal models to see what they're showing for the summer months. We begin with in May, and we go right way through to September. We cover the whole of the summer period in on a tri-monthly basis for that particular update. So that'll be with you around 6 o'clock this evening. This video is going to be quite a long video, so you can't watch it all in one go. It will be placed on the summer updates and forecast page. I've got a very busy day ahead of me today, so I might not get this video onto the summer updates and forecast page today. If I can't get it on there today, I'll be putting it on there definitely tomorrow, and there'll be a written summary that goes with it as well. I'm hoping to be able to get this video on the summer updates page today, but I'm having a very long day ahead of me. I'm a little bit poorly with ear infections at the moment, so I'm not all that well, and it just depends whether I feel up to it this evening. Hopefully I will, but if not, this video will be placed on the summer updates and forecast page tomorrow with that written report. So I think that's everything I've got to tell you. Just to say, it's going to be quite a long video, so if you can't watch it all in one go, you can come back and watch it if you want. Get a cup of tea, get a comfy chair, and some biscuits, and we'll talk you through our latest analogues. Big thank you to James, of course, for sorting out the analogues for me. As I always say, these analogues updates, I don't have the time to generate all of these myself, so I couldn't do these updates in terms of the analogues without James's input. So a big thank you, as ever, to the wondrous James Ackwill, my analogues guru. So we're going to begin by going back to where we was a couple of weeks ago, actually. We're going to look at March, and this time we're looking at March rain day, because there's two ways that you can measure rainfall. You can do it either through the total amount of rain that falls, total amount of precipitation that falls, or you can, and we did that with the first batch of March analogues, of course, for the summers, in terms of the top 20 wettest marches and the summers that follow them. That was back, probably, I think it was update number 4. The other way that you can measure rainfall, though, is the number of days that rain falls on, so the number of rain days, and that's what James has done for this little batch of analogues. So we're looking at the top 10 marches in terms of rain days, and this March 2018 does feature in that for England and for Wales. So this is the top 10 wettest marches by rain days. We've got 1963, 1977, 1978, 1994, 1992, 1980, 2008, 1998, 1979, and 1981. They're the top 10, excluding, of course, 2018. So this is what the Junes are like if you combine all of those years. This is what June is like for these top 10 rain day years. And we find that for June, we have below average heights to our south and to our north. Bit of a ridge in the central Atlantic. So it looks a little bit changeable, but there is a bit of high pressure close to us, so maybe not quite as unsettled for June. However, July, same old story. This is a recurring theme through this year's Analogues updates. July, we get the deterioration in terms of the blocking feature over Greenland and the below average heights, I should say, underneath it through the UK and through much of Europe as well, with the jet stream on a southerly track. So July looks more unsettled in comparison to June. And then August is the worst of all, and it's the same story that we saw with both the March cold Marches that we looked at last week, and also with the wettest Marches, top 20 wettest Marches in terms of total precipitation. Same story, but when we get to August, we just deepen that trough like mad over the top of the British Isles, and it just looks like a very unsettled pattern for August, with quite a blocking feature up to the north as well. So whether we measure this by rain days or by total precipitation, it looks like it's telling us the same story. And so the overall summer pattern by the top 10 rain days for March looks like this, and it's a very unsettled looking pattern again, with that deep trough centred over the top of the UK and Western Europe. So everything in terms of March really is pointing towards quite a poor summer. Now we're also going to have a quick look at the pattern for March. I told you last week that James went through the archives and the reanalysis. There are a lot of Marches that were featuring in terms of blocking over Greenland. So we had to narrow that down quite a bit, and these are the years that we managed to narrow it down to. We started at 1870 and we went down to 2013. Remember, this is looking at the blocking pattern that we have through March, and comparing it to the blocking pattern that we had this year. So this is comparing these Marches that were block Marches to the blocking that we had this year in March 2018. So the Junes that follow those Marches from, remember our first year is 1870, we go down to 2013. The Junes that follow those Marches look like this. Quite a strong blocking feature over Greenland, with the below average heights underneath it. Relatively easterly type setup for June, and that could be quite pleasant actually. The below average heights look like they're being held off by this blocking up to the north, so possibly a little bit better in June, or not too bad, I suppose I should say, in June. But look at this, we get that deterioration again in July, with below average heights over the UK and over northwestern parts of Europe as well. We've got the blocking going on up here as well. The jet stream is on that southerly track going down there, so it all looks rather grim, to say the least. And then we go through to August, and that also looking really quite grim, with blocking again centering itself over Greenland and over Scandinavia too, with the below average heights underneath it over the UK. And so August also with these March patterns and the summers that follow them, August also looking really quite grim indeed. But total years combined chart looks like that, and again very, very grim looking signals, with above average heights to the north, below average heights to the south, the jet streams on a southerly track. These look like, by and large, there are deviations. We've got 1955 in there, for example, which was a nice summer, but by and large it looks like these are pretty poor summers, with the exception there are a few deviations appearing. And just to break it all down into a table, so it helps you form the idea of what we've been looking at with these blocked marches. So this table just here is the total years that we had to work with, and there's a lot of them, too many really to be able to draw too many conclusions. So the best March pattern matches are these ones just here, starting in 1817 going down to 2013. The anomalies depicted by the colours, so blue below average, red above average, is compared to the 81 to 2010 average. You see that in March we're not deviating too far from average with a lot of these marches. They are more on the cooler side than the warmer side, but not big deviations either way. But you'll see that in the August column, we do get quite a lot of quite substantially colder than average months appearing in August, although there are a couple of nice Augusts in there. There's 1955, which is a hot August, also 2013, which is a fairly decent August as well. But generally, if it's going to be cooler than average in August following these March pattern matches, then it's probably going to be quite substantially cooler than average. For July, it looks like there's an equal split, really. So we have got some very nice Julys. That one, that one, that one. And, of course, 2013, a very hot July. And also 2001, 2010 as well. So there are a few pretty decent Julys here, but also some very cool, or even cold Julys. There's that one, and then those two, and then those two again. So probably just about an equal split, really, between either being a very warm month in July or a very cool month. So, a bit inconclusive, but I think overall, whichever way we look at these March patterns, whether it's through these March analogues, I should say, whether it's through temperature, which we looked at last week, CT, whether it's through precipitation, either rain days or rainfall, or whether it's through the overall blocked pattern, I think the March stuff, analogues, is really telling us that we are likely to be in for quite a significantly unsettled and relatively cool summer as well. Yes, there are deviations. There's 2013, there's 1955, which are better summers, but averaging it all out, I think probably quite likely based on what March did for its pattern, average temperature, average rainfall, that we are likely to have quite a poor summer. But of course, that's only one part of the summer forecast. This will make up part of the summer forecast, most definitely. There are many other things that we've got to look at, and so that moves us on to the main point of this sixth update. So we close the door on the March analogues now, and we move on to ENSO. So we know that we have the La Nina at the start of the year. This is the sea surface temperature anomaly map from NOAA for the first day of this year, New Year's Day 2018. This blue mass here through the Pacific Ocean, that is the signature of the cold event. That's signature of La Nina. So we know that through the winter just gone, it was a La Nina winter. We also know that that La Nina signal is weakening. So this is the latest map, anomaly map from NOAA. And you can see how much weaker those blue colours are through the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So clearly, although we do still have just about a La Nina signature, clearly we are weakening that, and presumably, highly likely, that we are moving back to ENSO neutral. So what we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about summers that follow La Nina and go to ENSO neutral. That's what the CFS V2, for example, is forecasting at the moment. We did the ENSO update yesterday, by the way. If you haven't seen it yet, do check that out. So this is what the CFS V2 is forecasting for the central part of the Pacific Ocean in terms of ENSO. It just wants to keep us at ENSO neutral. Dates on the bottom of the chart. So that's July just there. That's October just there. And we can see that it wants to keep us around ENSO neutral through the remainder of the year, actually, even into January 2019, I should say. Just here, it is shifting things a little bit towards the warmer side of ENSO neutral, but it is still within ENSO neutral conditions. So it just wants to keep this ENSO neutral condition going right way through to the end of the year. Now, whether that's how it plays out, it may not be. It may be that we'll shift towards El Nino, for example, in the second half of the year, or it may be that we might even go back to La Nina in the second half of the year. We can't definitively say this is how things are going to work out, but the most likely option, and next week we will explore other options in terms of ENSO, but the most likely option after you've had an El Nino or a La Nina event is that you'll go back to ENSO neutral the following year. So the most likely option is that we're going to go from La Nina to ENSO neutral, and we'll be having an ENSO neutral summer. And so that's what our analogues are going to focus on now for the rest of this update and for next week's update as well. We're going to look for today at summers that are ENSO neutral following La Nina. And the first summer that we look at is the summer of 1870, this summer. Just here. So we have, for this summer, it looks like we have quite a cool looking scenery. We have below average heights over and to the east and the northeast of the British Isles, with above average heights in the Atlantic and going up towards Greenland. So you'll therefore be expecting us to be on the cool side of the jet stream with that one. Our next summer is 1876. You'll notice as we go along with these, and a lot of these years are cropping up in other analogues updates. This one, for example, has cropped up in at least one other of our summer analogues updates. It is interesting how the same years can keep recurring with these analogues. So when we come to put it all together to do the summer forecast, which we will be doing on the 27th of May, it's getting ever closer. You will see that there are years that are much stronger years in terms of the analogues, with several sort of different elements matching up with each other. You'll see that there are several years that are strong analogues and other years that are weaker analogues. So this one, 1876, looks like it was a relatively nice summer, actually, with above average heights close to and just a little bit to the east of the British Isles. That's the ENSO neutral summer of 1876, following the La Nina of 1875, 1876. 1880 comes up next. This one looks like a very poor summer, with below average heights around the UK and to the south of the country, and a blocking feature up towards Greenland, with the jet stream being sent on a very southerly track down there. 1887 comes up next. I think this is a new one. I don't think this one's featured all that much. So we have above average heights to the north of the British Isles, with below average heights in the central Atlantic. And we are extending that ridge down into west of Europe as well. So the jet stream is probably doing something rather like that. That could potentially be a reasonable summer, probably quite cool, but perhaps with a fair amount of pleasant weather at times. 1895 shows up next. This is a first. I don't think this one has appeared in the analogues before. So this one has, again, quite a strong blocking feature up towards Greenland, and it has below average heights underneath it. The jet streams down there. I think overall this is a rather cool and changeable summer, but it did have a very warm, quite a hot spell in September in the summer of 1895. 1904 comes up next. This one looks quite unsettled, with below average heights out to the southwest, above average heights up to the northeast. The flow and the jet stream is likely to be doing something like that. So a rather changeable summer in 1904. 1917, rather worrying. This is a very poor summer. The ENSO neutral summer of 1917, following the weak La Nina of the winter a severely cold winter of 1916-1917 looks like this, and it's a very unsettled summer indeed, with a deep trough centred over just to the west of the British Isles, and the jet stream is down here. That looks like a very unsettled and wet summer indeed. It was a very unsettled and wet summer. 1925. So I'm getting a few summers here that we've not seen before. This one has above average heights over and to the north of the British Isles, with below average heights to the south and to the southeast. Don't know a great deal about this summer, but I would suspect it was a rather cool and unsettled summer, with the flow and the jet stream doing something like that. However, it's possibly that it was quite warm at times, because I think the way the trough and the ridge are aligned, there's a possibility that there would have been some warm easterlies at times in that summer. 1934 is next. I think this summer has featured at least once. Not sure if it has, but I think it has. So this one has a blocking feature up to the north, with below average heights down to the south. Quite a few of these summers placing ridging up to the north of the British Isles, you'll notice. And whether it's a cool summer or not too cold just depends on the exact placement of that blocking. Again, this one could possibly be bringing in quite a lot of easterly winds, so it is potentially warm at times in this summer of 1934. 1939 comes up next, the summer just before the outbreak of the Second World War, and this one has a blocking feature up to the north, so almost kind of like beginning to get the pattern that we had in the winter of 39-40, perhaps. So you can see the genesis of that, with all of this above average heights going on up to the north, below average heights to our south. So again, probably quite an unsettled summer, but not overly so. There would have been some drier and warmer spells at times in that summer of 1939. 1943 comes up next. This could potentially be a reasonable signal for the summer. We've got below average heights out to the northwest, but we have got quite a strong ridge from the Azores high. So despite the fact we still see quite a strong blocking signal, actually we're probably bringing the air up from the west and the southwest, and so there could be some reasonably pleasant days in that summer of 1943. Not so for 1965 though. This is our next summer that is going from it goes from La Nina in the winter of 64-65 to ENSO neutral in the summer of 1965, and this is just a really, really wet summer. The 1960s are famous for being very poor with the summers. Most of them were cold and wet, and this is up there with the worst of the 1960s summers. Really, really bad summer indeed in the summer of 1965. 1972 comes up next. The early 70s, not really all that well remembered for their summers. Things got much more interesting in the middle of the 1970s, of course, but the early 70s were generally rather unsettled and quite cool, with a trough within the 500 millibar flow. I think that was quite a poor summer in 1972. However, look at this. 1976 appears in our Analogues package. This is our first real classic summer that we've had for these La Nina to ENSO neutral summers, and we know all about this summer, of course. It doesn't take a genius to work out what's going on there. A strong block centred over the top of the UK, bringing in hot easterly winds as well. All the rain-bearing systems being kept to the west and to the south, to the northwest of the country, and so that's the great drought summer of 1976. And then this is another summer that's cropping up a lot in our analogues this year. This is 1984, and this is quite a decent summer as well. It's forgotten a little bit because the summer before it, 1983, was a very hot summer, but this wasn't too shabby a summer at all, and deserves to be remembered in its own merits, really. It does have plenty of warm and dry weather, with a pattern not that similar to 1976, but the difference is that the centre of the high pressure is just to the west-northwest of the country, which leaves us doing something like that with the flow and with the jet stream. So it's not a classic summer like 1976, but it is a decent summer, that 1984, one of the better summers of the 1980s. And then we've got another one, we've got 1989 appearing. So as we've got closer to the present day, as we've got closer to 2018, we're beginning to get some rather better summers beginning to appear, you'll notice. This one, and again, this one is cropping up in the analogues a little bit this year also. This one has above average heights centred close to the British Isles, with below average heights up to the north. Better change the colour. We've got below average heights up to the north up there, and the jet stream is pushed to our north as well. That one is a very nice summer in 1989. We had two hot summers back to back, 89 and 1990, and that is a really good summer. 1996 comes up next. This one again cropping up a lot in our analogues package, and I haven't measured this yet, but I assume 1996 is probably appearing more than any other, or probably has appeared more than any other year so far for our analogues this year, for the summer 2018 analogues. This one, again, I won't go over it too much because we have talked about it quite a bit in the analogues recently. It's a strange summer. It has below average heights up to the north, so no blocking signal at all. Bit of a ridge out to the west, and below average heights again to the south. The thing with this summer is that all the summer months, June, July and August, did contain at least one spell of quite impressively hot weather. But overall, it is actually quite a changeable summer, and certainly not remembered as one of the hottest summers of the 1990s. Have many hot summers, of course, with 1990 itself, 1994, 1995, 1997, the list goes on. 1990s were a classic decade for hot summers. And whilst 1996 wasn't too bad a summer, it did have, as I say, at least one hot spell in all three summer months. It's not remembered up there with the hottest summers of the 1990s. However, if it had occurred in another decade, say the summer of 1996 had occurred in the 1960s, then it's possible that it would be much more fondly remembered. We go through to 2001. This one has also cropped up before within our analogues package. This is how the summer, the ENSO neutral summer of 2001 looks following the La Nina of 2001. This is quite an unsettled summer with below average heights to the north, above average heights down to the southwest. So it is a changeable summer, but quite a warm summer as well. For such an unsettled pattern, it did have quite a lot of warm weather, especially later in the summer. A lot of humid, damp days. 2006 comes up next. Again, this one is cropping up quite frequently within our analogues packages. So this one is our last really hot summer. This has a really hot pattern through June and July in particular. Of course, July 2006 is both the hottest July and the hottest month on record. So definitely, as we've got closer to the present year, as got closer to 2018, these summers have picked up very considerably, and there are several really quite decent summers showing up within these analogues. We go through to 2009. So I don't think we've seen this summer before within the analogues package. This one follows the La Nina of 2008 to 2009. And this is the famous barbecue summer. Of course, you might remember that the UK Met Office were forecasting a barbecue summer for the summer of 2009. What actually happened is that we came away with quite an unsettled summer with below average heights to the west and above average heights down from south. There was one very impressive heat wave at the end of June into the start of July 2009, but the rest of the summer wasn't much to write home about overall. I think temperatures in the end came out close to average. And then I think this is the last one. This is 2012, and you don't need me to tell you too much about this summer. It was a very horrendous summer indeed, with below average heights, a deep trough centred over the Atlantic and the UK, a really strong blocking signal up over Greenland was quite a bit of ridging through southern Europe, so quite a hot summer down in the south of Europe, but for us it was no good at all, and particularly bad in June and July. I think it did pick up a little bit in August of 2012, but June and July were very, very poor indeed. Now what we've done there is I'll just show you the all years combined charts, by the way. So for June, we find that actually it's not too bad a signal for June. We get this area of above average heights over and to the north of the British Isles and the North East. So it does imply that June could start off with a reasonable amount of dry weather. That looks okay. It doesn't look too bad at all there in June. But then July, and this is really interesting. Look at this. We go through to July, and after that better signal for June, we find blocking appears around Greenland again, with the below average heights underneath it in the Atlantic and the jet stream going onto a southerly track as well. Now that is really in line with what we've been seeing with our analogues that we've been doing all through this season. This idea that June has the greatest chance of high pressure of being a decent month, and then there's a deterioration taking place in July, and then that takes us through to August, and it culminates in, again, this really unsettled looking pattern. Look at this, with the blocking to the north and the below average heights to the south. Now remember, these are something completely different to what we've looked at before. This is ENSO. It's nothing to do, seemingly nothing to do with solar activity. It's seemingly nothing to do with the March that was just experienced. And yet, we are still seeing the same situation, the same suggestion within the analogues, which is for the best chance of a decent summer month is in June, then the deterioration taking place through July and August. Keep in mind, there is a little bit of a split within these analogues, so the later analogues definitely are better. We've got 1976, we've got 1984, we've got 1989, we've got 2006 in there in the later analogues. So let's say we just went from 1950, we would possibly see a rather different looking reanalysis chart there for August, and the total summer combined, so it's all summer months all put together from those years, starting with 1876 and going all the way down to I think go down to 2012, starting with all of those or putting all those years together. Again, for the summers, we find a strong blocking signal to the north and the below average heights to the south. But bear in mind, June does have a better pattern overall, and then we get that suggestion of the deterioration. Now, I got a little bit ahead of myself a few minutes ago. I'm sure you noticed that. So I'll go back to saying what I was saying then. What we've done with this so far is that we've just been looking at all La Niñas. We haven't tried to narrow it down at all. So one other thing we can do to narrow this down a little bit is to look at the strength of the La Niña, because of course you do get varying degrees of ENSO events. You can either have a really weak ENSO event, or you can even have a very strong ENSO event, and that's true whether it's La Niña or El Niño. So this is from the Climate Prediction Centre. This is the cold and warm episodes by season table. So this is depicting all ENSO events going right way back to 1950, and we'll just show you how strong our La Niña was. So 2017, 2018, we're down here, and this is the La Niña, these blue negative numbers just here, and we see, but it was actually quite a weak La Niña event. It was on the weak side of the scale. For example, 2010, 2011, that was a much stronger La Niña, going down at its most intense. It actually goes down to minus 1.7. That La Niña event of 2010, 2011, whereas this La Nina event at its strongest in this tri-monthly period just here for November, December, January only goes down to -1.0. So it's at the weak end of the scale of La Nina events. So finally what James has done, he's gone back and had a look at the these years that are just weak La Ninas. So he's taken out all of the strong La Ninas and just left in weak La Ninas, and then put those summers together that are very ENSO neutral summers, remember, but they're following weak La Ninas. And this is how it looks for June. Again, it's a very similar idea, but we have the above average heights extending close to the British Isles, so it implies June has the best chance, not guaranteed, but best chance of having some drier and warmer conditions with below average heights going on down to the south. But how does July look? And look at that, it's the same story again. This is quite remarkable how this is coming out this year. So much consistency that the analogues are suggesting after what could be quite a pleasant June, we get to July and we have this really unsettled looking pattern emerging with below average heights centred over the UK and a strong blocking signal around Greenland. Again, keep in mind that there are better summers closer to this year. So again, within these summers, we've got 2006, for example, we've got 1984. So closer to us, there are some better summers in there, but even with that said, they're in the minority, and overall it's quite unsettled looking pattern for July. And the same is true really for August, with again quite a strong blocking signal being centred to the northeast of the country, and the below average heights for low pressure very close to the UK, meaning that August also is likely to be quite disappointing. And putting all of those months together, this is what we come out with for the summers that follow weak La Ninas. They're ENSO neutral summers following a weak La Nina. And look at that, it's the same story that we've seen time and again through these analogues so far, with the blocking signal to the north, but below average heights to the south, and the jet stream going rather like that. It really is truly remarkable how these analogues are coming out this year, because you would seemingly think that these analogues we've just looked at, which are weak, either La Nina to ENSO neutral or weak La Nina to ENSO neutral, you wouldn't think that's got much connection to, let's say, the CET, cold CETs in March that we looked at last week, or to where we are in the solar cycle. And yet, obviously, it does, because we are seeing many of the same years re-emerging through these analogues as we're going along. And not only that, we're seeing very, very similar signals. So this is another analogues update that does indicate we might get a really pleasant month in June, and then we might get a deterioration through the middle and latter part of the summer. The only caveat is that, again, several of the summers nearer to 2018 are quite a lot better than the earlier summers. So there are some quite decent summers in there, such as 2006, such as 1989, such as 1984. So maybe as we get closer to 2018, some of the summers are better, but nevertheless, it's still quite a consistent signal that we're seeing within our analogues this year. Now, that's the La Nina to ENSO neutral summers, but there are other options on the table that we might get for the summer of 2018 in terms of ENSO. So we'll explore some of those other options for next week's 7th analogues update. We'll also have a little bit more on these La Nina to ENSO neutral summers as well. So be more next week. Come back for that then. But at just under 40 minutes, that rounds things up for today's Summer Analogues update. Just say that later on today, we've got the Gaz City Roundup, and then we'll have a look at the long-range Meteo France. And also, I'm sorry, my brain is really rather frazzled now. So we've got Gasworthy's City Roundup, and then we'll have a look at the season models from Metro France and the ECM WF. And that's all coming up later on today, so come back for that then. I'm going to go and have a lay down in a darkened room and get a cold flannel, I think. So that's all for now, and thanks for watching.